Hey guys, welcome back. So I decided, like we did last year around the holidays, I'm going to share some stories with you from my childhood, man. And understand, I think I was a pretty good kid growing up. Now, my brother, he would probably disagree with that, and the aspect that all I did was aggravate the fire out of him growing up. But that's who I am. I like to pick, I like to joke, and I like to keep you thinking. So I can remember back as a child, and I'm about 3 years older than my sister, and I had her convinced that she had been adopted. Now, how do you convince someone that they were adopted? Well, it's simple. Hey, I'm 3 years older than you. I don't remember a mother being pregnant. I don't really remember being 3 years old, but I don't remember her being pregnant. But what I do remember is they were going out to a store that sells babies, and they came home with you. And after continuing to go through this type of situation, I had her convinced. I was like, how many of our family members do you see with blonde hair and blue eyes? None. My brother's brown eyes. I'm hazel. Now my dad does have blue eyes, and it runs on his side of the family as well. But yeah, so I convinced her that she was actually adopted, and I did get in a little bit of trouble over that. Now I can also remember growing up. We were raised in a way where when our dad would call, and he would say, "Hey boy," well, it was, so which one? Is it both of you? Whichever one gets here first. Well, I learned pretty early on that the first person that got there typically didn't have to do whatever the chore was going to be. And I would make sure I would like knock him out of the way, knock him into the closet running. We shared a room, and I'd like try to knock him out of the way, push him out of the way and stuff. So I'd be the first one there, so he'd get stuck doing the stuff. Well, when you have a brother that's older than you and quite a bit bigger than you at the time, you better be moving. You better be fast because he was coming in behind you, and all you had to do was say, "Dad, he's trying to hit me," and boy, it was on. And you got to sneak off. You didn't have to deal with anything. And those are some of the stories from back in the day. Now, one of the most interesting stories that I can have, and I don't think it's inappropriate, but you might not want small children to hear this. We were, I don't even think I was a teenager yet. I might have been 12, and we had went out hunting, and we had brought my grandpa, my mother's dad, with us to this location. We're going hunting. Well, he gets to the location before us, a little bit before us, and we're coming through the woods, and we're getting to our blind area where we're going to be doing some deer hunting. And as we're coming that way, there is this big white light, reflective surface in a tree. And my dad is coming through. He's like, "What is that?" We're like, "What is that?" And we're looking. Well, it is our grandpa up in a tree with his butt hanging off a limb, trying to take, yeah. So, yeah, and we're like, "What are you doing?" It makes the deer come in. Now, I have been hunting, and I have been successfully hunting for many years. I have many deer, when it comes to buck and doe and things like that. Deer that people could probably only dream of. And at no point did I ever take a dump while in my stand to draw the deer in. In fact, I would think that that would have the opposite effect. But that's what he was doing. Kind of weird, interesting stuff. Weird story, whatever, man. But growing up, I was always doing the weird stuff. I was always into, just about anything and everything. Now when I say it, I wasn't into drugs. I wasn't into, gang type stuff or anything like that. We grew up in the country and stuff. And my brother was more into like, a lot more into the outdoors than I was. I would go outdoors. I like to go out in the woods and stuff, but we had different interests when we went out there as well. So I was just kind of more or less go try to do a little fishing or something like that in the creek. And hey, you can actually catch catfish and stuff like that in creeks. People don't realize that. But I can remember growing up, and my brother had gotten into this gold panning kick. And he'd been reading some books at the library and was making his own sluice boxes and different things like that. It was actually successful in finding gold. It was pretty cool. And he's like trying to show me, and I'm going, "Oh, this is kind of cool." Well, I had this old uh, coin from Mexico, and it looked like gold. I don't think it really was, and I don't know what denomination it was, but it was something. I don't know how I even come across it, but I remember finding like, "Oh, look, I found a gold doubloon." Well, he wasn't dumb. He knew it wasn't the gold doubloon. But then he got into this thing where he was really into forensic science. Now, for those who don't know what that is like fingerprinting and the scientific method of discovering who a culprit is. And he just still really good at that stuff. But he'd also got into this Bigfoot stuff. And I had kind of convinced him that, I seen a Bigfoot, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was one moving around. I seen this big shadow and all this stuff outside this window, and he's like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to check it out in the morning. So I get up really early before he's up, and I go out and I'm barefooted. I'll walk around barefooted most of the time because I didn't have shoes. I hate shoes. They're restrictive. Even today as an adult, I hate shoes. Now down here in Florida, I do wear flip-flops just about year round. I have shoes if I need it, if it's raining and stuff, but I hate shoes, man. I really do. But I go out and I make this print. It is not a normal size footprint, but I'm using my feet. Okay, I'm using my foot, and I'm making this thing wider and stuff. And I remember he was reading this book, and I think it was Jeff Muldren who'd put it out, and it was talking about the dermal ridges. For those who don't know what that is, just like your hands have these little creases and like almost fingerprint type swirls and markings and stuff in it, so do your feet. Really, look at the bottom of your foot. So I'm trying to make sure that this print is perfect, and this thing is huge. And that next morning, I'm like, hey man, I got up, I went down there. There is a huge footprint. So he's got his plaster kit, and he is getting this thing ready, and he's doing this plaster kit on it. And he's just examining it with this magnificent. It's got dermal ridges. It's definitely something, and after he's done with everything, what I'm not thinking is this stuff actually costs money. It's not cheap, and he uses all this stuff to get this cast, and then I come clean that it's just me pulling a prank, And I kind of sit back, and when I look back, it's like, my older brother used to give me a lot of guff. Well, that's because I was that middle child, always messing with everybody, and that's just the way that I am. That's the way that I was, and I am still that way today. When you go to work with me, man, most people eventually, after they get my personality, they enjoy working with me. But when they first start off, you kind of like, most people are like, oh, this guy's kind of a butthole, he's but they don't realize those are in jokes, that the mannerisms and stuff that I use. It's just who I am. But yeah, so those are some of the interesting stories that we had. Now, one of the best stories that I have, and I don't remember how old I was young, man. And it was the first time I had ever shot a shotgun. And I'm sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm flat-footed. And there's no deer, nothing around. There's not anything moving or stirring anywhere. And I remember talking to my dad. I was like, man, I really want to shoot my new gun. And he's like, you want to shoot it? I'm like, yeah. And the only time I'd ever seen a shotgun shot was years and years before. And my brother was rather young, and he shot a double-barrel shotgun, both barrels at the same time. So I'm going, man, these things are freaking monsters when you shoot them. Well, I have an old single shot New England. It's light as a feather, it kicks like a mule. And I'm sitting flat footed, both feet in front of me, and I pull up and I shoot. And the recoil flips me straight back on my back. And my dad's laughing, and he's like, hey, man, why do you think when people shoot, they put their foot kind of behind them a little bit when they're in that sitting stance? I'm like, I never really thought much about it. I learned. That's what happens. The best way to learn sometimes is to look like an idiot, or to have a teacher who is not going to educate you on a process or teach you how to do it. They're going to learn you. And we were learned a lot growing up. There was a lot of stuff. My dad was like, I want to learn you something. It's like, oh, man, here we go. So he was working on a car when we were kids, and I don't know. I was a teenager, man. There was other stuff I'd rather be doing. Most of it was gaming. I was into gaming pretty heavy, but I also enjoyed trying to wood carve and stuff like that. Not that I've ever been any good at it, but I had other stuff I was going to do. So he's working on this car, and it's dark. He's got to get it done because he's got work the next morning. And he's like, I just need you to hold this flashlight. I'm like, okay. So you're holding the flashlight, not paying attention to what he's doing. I'm off in my own head, and the light's drifting around under the hood of the car. But I was like, hey, man, hold the light there. And I'm like, I am. He's like, no, it's right here. Well, he grabs by the back of the head, and he makes sure you see the point. And he shine like, can you hold it right there? It's like, yeah. Well, I learned how to hold a light because he learned me something. So like most people out there might be like, well, that seemed kind of overkill, to teach somebody something. But you have to understand, when people have ADHD, they call it today, and things like that, it's not that most of them can't be educated. It's just people don't know how to educate them, and you need to be that stronger hand to show you that you're going to do what you need to do. And I feel that I'm a better man for that, because when it comes to paying attention to stuff, sometimes you may notice in some of my videos I'll be talking about one thing and then get off track rambling about something else like I just done. Well, that's because there's a little ADHD in there. That's what happens. People are like, well, do you take medicine for it? No, I do not. What I do is I work outside. I work with the chickens. I work with the quail. I work in the garden, and I find something that it requires my full attention. And if you don't get it done and you don't do it right, you don't make sure you're doing the job, it doesn't produce, and you learn. So if your children are kind of goofy and they're not really paying attention, stop trying to educate them and stop trying to teach them and learn them something, man. That's what it takes. The strong hand and some determination that, hey, you know what? You're not going to be a goof off. You're not going to be a screw up. And that's what it takes in life, guys. That is really what it takes. But I can remember growing up, man, just different stuff. And it was always, some of these stories I'm not going to tell because that's just embarrassing, really. Not really embarrassing to me because I don't care what people think, but I'm not going to tell because I don't want to embarrass my siblings and stuff like that. But, when it comes to like my older brother, man, I love him to death. But, man, looking back at it, I can see why, uh, he probably, I don't say that he ever hated me, but I'm sure he wasn't the biggest fan of me. But I remember when he went off into the military, went into the Air Force. And to begin with, it was kind of like, well, crap, man. You share a room most of your life. You're like, man, he done left. What the heck? Feel like you lose your best friend. And I'm like, okay. So I'm kind of out just doing my own thing, cruising around in the car stuff. And I never really associated around people. It just wasn't my thing. I've always been kind of a loner and things. I enjoy doing stuff, but I don't really want people around because I want to enjoy what I enjoy doing without other people's outside influence and stuff. And I remember when he was coming home, um, he comes in and I'm like, hey man, check this new music I'm listening to. Now, when he went into the military, by the time he gets back home, the music style has changed. I mean, when he went in, you had like cool music, Bush and different things like that going in. And then by the time he gets out, it's getting into that late 90s, early 2000 periods, when he gets home. And he's like, why are you listening to this garbage? I showed you the good stations. I'm like, well, yeah, man, but this is the new music. And when you're a kid, you're kind of like trying to find your own identity and stuff like that. And now I go back and I listen to some of that music. No, I don't know what I was thinking, man. He doesn't show me the good music. My dad showed me the good music when it comes to classic rock. When it comes to oldies, I love a lot of oldies and stuff like that. I guess I learned that more from my parents than anything, and even a lot of Christian bands and stuff. But some of this music I used to listen to back in my, when I was 19, 20 years old, I won't listen to it now. And I remember years back, I moved out to Oregon. He was living out west, and I moved out to Oregon. And it's after my kids passed away and all. And he's like, hey, man, do you listen to country? So I don't listen to that whiny nose twang. I just don't. Well, he showed me some interesting country music that's actually pretty good. Toby Keith, stuff like that. Because, I have a goofy personality anyway. And I really enjoy that comedy type stuff. So he's introducing me to these different bands. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then you get around other people like, oh, do you listen to country? And you tell them who you listen to. Well, I don't know, that's not country. I'm like, well, what's country? So let me show you some good old fashioned country. And they put up a Waylon Jennings. Now I know his name is Waylon, but he's wailing. And I cannot listen to that. If you listen to that, I hope you don't make you unsubscribe. It's not my thing, man. It is not my thing. It's not my cup of tea. It's just kind of weird type music to me, but I understand that people enjoy it. Now, on the same note, I do like actual bluegrass with no singing because I love the sounds of the stringed instruments, the brass, and things like that they use in it, and it's really cool. The one thing I can't stand though is somebody playing spoons. To me, it's like taking and rubbing your nails down on a chalkboard. I can't stand spoons. It's just I don't understand it, man. Someone's sitting around and like, I really want to play a musical instrument, but I don't have any money. And they're looking around and like, well, I got a couple spoons here. They start popping the spoons on their legs. Okay, well, that's fine. I do play the jaw harp. People are like, what? What the heck is a jaw harp? Well, you've probably heard one and don't even realize it. If you watched old Looney Tunes, you've probably even seen Bugs Bunny walking around when he's bang, bang, banging, and it shows something pop. That's when that little spring pops. But that is a jaw harp. And that is one of the oldest musical instruments in the world. And I like to play that. I also like to play the guitar. I've not played the guitar in probably 12 years, man. I stopped playing after kids passed away. I was teaching my daughter how to play the guitar, and that was one of the last things that I remember about playing it. Now it's been so long ago. I still remember how to play the chords. Fingers are not broke into it, and you get arthritis as you get older, and it is what it is. But I did enjoy writing music. I would play some different type of music you would hear on the radio and stuff, and a lot of praise musics and stuff like that. More modern praise, but knew a lot of the older songs too. The hymns and stuff. But I it really enjoyed writing my own stuff. And that's something that, I'm starting to get where I kind of want to start playing around with that thing again. So that might be something that we might do in the future is, if I can come up with some good material and might show you some stuff I've written over the years. I don't know. But I don't know, man. I'm kind of self-conscious when it comes to that kind of stuff. I might show it. But most of that stuff was, I was in a time where that was where I would play that different type of music to the kids, and it is not stuff like you hear on the radio. Most of it is more of a classical guitar style, and that's where I've always really I love classical music. I love violins, I love cellos. That's really some of my stuff. If you've ever heard the band Skillet, if not, I definitely recommend you check them out. Now, if you don't like Christian rock, then yeah, you're probably not going to like them. But they actually had, when I first heard about them, they were doing a Comatose concert, which was the name of the concert, Comatose, and it was just beyond anything I had ever seen. The musical instruments, yes, they had electric guitars, they had electric basses and stuff, but they actually had a stringed orchestra with them playing cellos, violins, and it just blew my mind. So for people who like ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, back in the day, you would probably love some of their the Skillet music that's out there when it was in that tour. Now I don't know if they do that. I kind of fall out of touch with bands. They'll come out with new CDs and things, and I listen, I'm not too into it, or maybe I really like it. I like a lot of Dave Crowder type stuff. He had a CD come out. I think it's called Ghost. I think is what it is, but sing about the Holy Ghost and singing about the Lord. He's a Christian singer. A lot of people more like his style with the piano, but that CD is more of a banjo picking bluegrass type sound, not without the twangy bluegrass singing in there. It's Crowder singing, and it was just amazing. Now I think I posted some of his songs up in the playlist, and that is or my praise playlist. If you don't check out the playlist, we're always adding stuff to that, and that's one of the things that I feel is important because it's easier for me to find the songs that I like. Because if I don't, I forget what they're called. But I remember sort of kind of what the lyrics were. So sometimes you can find it, and other times you can remember what the tune sounds like, but you don't remember what the lyrics were. And yeah, people go, well, they have an app for that. But the thing is, when it comes to Christian music, we're talking about not just the main stuff that you would hear on like Way FM and things like that, but or Family Life Radio. We're talking about music that is actually sung in churches, is recorded, and then it's put up. Choir music, and there are some really good choirs out there, and you don't know what song it is. You don't remember, you can try to hum the tune and things like that, but those apps don't pick up on that for some reason. It is just what it is. But I hope you kind of get to know a little bit more about me through this video, guys. I get up here a lot, and I might joke around a little bit and stuff, but we try to stay fairly serious. Now, when I go to like one of my brother's videos, and he's trying to make a video and he wants to be like serious, we'll sit down and he'll talk about, okay, so this is what we're going to discuss. Feel free to chime in with your opinions on this stuff. It's like, okay, cool. So then, if you've ever seen a video that he and I have done together where I come into one of his videos, all I'm doing is messing with him the whole time. I'm not being serious. I'm throwing him off track, and that's just who I am. I don't mean to do it. It just comes naturally. So it's not that I'm intentionally being a butthole. It's just that it's just one of those things that comes natural when I deal with my older brother, when I deal with my younger sister. They moved away several years back, so I don't see them much. But when I would get around them, that's just who I am. I'm the same person that I was in a lot of retrospects, but in some other retrospects, I've changed a lot, but I don't know how to reconnect, I guess is what you would call it. So I just go back to, default setting as kind of like a computer setting would, I will just go back to default. And that happens a lot. So I can remember my aunt who has now passed away. She would call me a clown and things like that. And she was like, I always figured when you got older, you wouldn't accomplish anything. You would never amount to much. It's like, Why? He said, well, you was always clowning around. Well, understand there is a serious side to me as well. I'm the type of person that once I get focused on a goal or a project, I'm not going to stop until I reach that goal and project. Now, it may take a while to get there because, you get a lot of distractions going on, but I usually will accomplish that. Some of the things I want to do, I want to graduate before I was 17, graduate high school, was out of trade school by 17 years old, working full-time job, making good money. I wanted to buy, the reason for all of that is I had set up, I wanted my first car to be a Firebird, actually Trans Am, like what was in Smokey and the Bandit. Well, I didn't get Smokey and the Bandit version, but I went with the second Smokey and the Bandit movie, and I ended up getting the Firebird instead of the Trans Am. I just really liked the lines on it, man. It was an 81 Firebird. Love that car. That was out of all the vehicles I've ever owned in my life, that is the one car that I regret ever having gotten rid of. Now, I wanted to have a Corvette by the time I was 18, and I can remember people like, man, you're going to have to work hard for that because that's not something that's just going to happen. And I remember I'm sitting there on my 18th birthday, and I'm kind of looking through the paper, and my dad had come in. He's like, hey, what are you doing over there, boy? And I'm like, well, I'm looking at cars. And he goes, well, you got a car. Because I had a nice Firebird, And it wasn't nice when I bought it. Now, it wasn't bad, but it needed a lot of work, changing out the wheel cylinders and things like that, tires, trying to find the right mags and stuff. I don't like these common new things that they put out there. I wanted the original Pontiac Division mags and stuff, and then clean them up, paint them up yourself, and just going all out on this car, trying to get it the way I wanted it, getting it painted, doing the exhaust work. And when you crawled under my vehicle, it was not just rust or dirt and stuff like that. It was clean all the way through. The exhaust painted out, header white, the thrush mufflers, I had them painted hot dog red, heat treated paint, man, awesome all the way through engine block. And a lot of that stuff, my brother, he was really into detailing his cars and stuff. So I kind of watched what he was doing. I was a year behind him in driving and all, and I'm kind of watching what he's doing. I'm like, this seems really cool. So can't wait to get a car to do that. So it was one of the things that was just really awesome. And I remember later on in life, my dad was like, yeah, I took this thing to a guy, and he was like, it just kept going on and on about how amazing the exhaust were. And this has been probably almost a decade later, and I'm going, yeah, I put a lot of work into that. So that's what I told him. You was out there, you parked your car over this area that was like just a big drop off, and I would crawl up under the car from there because I didn't feel like jacking up. I try to find the easiest, best way to do things. I don't be out there working jacks and stuff to get under the car because I don't really trust jacks much. But ended up getting all that done. I was able to buy my Corvette. It was right around the time my 18th birthday. I think it fell on a Saturday that year, so didn't really go out and do anything like that. But or maybe it fell on a Friday. I don't remember now, but I do remember it wasn't but a day or two later. My dad and I would go out to a dealership. We're looking around. We end up finding the one that I want, and I paid for it. It's one of the things. You worked out payments to pay for it, but it's one of the things. Parents like really proud of you. You're showing a lot of responsibility. It's great. And I can remember thinking, I'll never get married. This is pretty great. Just get what you want, work your butt off, get what you want. This is awesome and all that stuff. And I kind of wished I had kept that mentality in some things, but it is what it is. But after you get married, that can be a great thing as well, guys. But so now kind of what I look at, you've probably seen a few pictures of the Jeep that I put up. Originally I got Jeep, so I'm not doing anything to it. Well, next thing I know, I'm putting light bars on, changing out the hoods, and just always working and doing something to it. I enjoy doing it. Now, out of all the vehicles I've ever owned, it's probably one of my favorites to drive around because you can go off-road with this thing. It has true four-wheel drive. We're not talking this garbage where you just flip a switch. It locks all four in, man. When they built Rubicons, they knew what they were doing. It is an amazing vehicle. I love it. I've had it in some really weird, bad spots, but have never gotten stuck. And I will tell you, if you're looking for a true off-road vehicle, the price tag is kind of high, but the Rubicon is the way to go. At least the JKU Rubicons, or the JK. For those who don't know the difference between a JK and a JKU, the JKU is a four-door. I get the four-door because there's room for my fishing poles and hunting equipment and my toolbox and stuff like that. And then if I have a passenger or more than one passenger, they have a place to sit. Now, a JK is going to take you a lot further places because, again, it's not as long of a wheelbase, but, they can flip over quite a bit easier too. So that's something to keep in mind. But, it's just been a fun vehicle to have, and it's great behind the RV because anywhere you go, you have instant access to a vehicle pulling that thing, and anywhere you want to go at that point is great. Up in Tennessee, doing a lot of trout fishing and stuff, taking old mud trails and stuff, old Jeep trails. You've heard them call it a Jeep trail or a goat trail. If it's a goat trail, a Jeep's going to go on it, guys. If it's an old Jeep trail, you can't always get a truck down a Jeep trail, but you can get a Jeep up a truck trail. So that's some pretty cool stuff too. And just really enjoy that type stuff. I love the outdoors now. Where my view of the outdoors, my brother's view of the outdoors differs is he thinks it's fun to go into the woods with nothing but a pocket knife and survive. Which is great. I've learned a lot of stuff, seeing how he does stuff, camping with him over the years. But when I say camping, it's not letting you go into the campsite, you throw up your tent, and everything's great. No, you've got to build your shelters. You've got to make your fires the old-fashioned way, and I'm not talking with a lighter and some gasoline or a match some gasoline, the old-fashioned way, like the primitives did it. And, and you learn a lot of stuff like that. But to me, that's just not as enjoyable. What I like to do when I go camp is have a nice tent, and go out and have a fishing pole. And if I'm going camping, there better be some fishing nearby because I'm not hiking 5 miles to a fishing hole. I'm just not. So I like to go fishing and stuff like that. Have a place to throw a tent up nearby so you can fish at night, do your catfish, do your bass fishing in the mornings and stuff throughout the day. Just really awesome to do all that kind of stuff. But, that's just the type of person that I am. But if you're more of the type, like, man, no, I want to go out and I want to live primitive, that, man, you need to check out his channel, Survival Living, because he's going to show you how to go primitive. And let me tell you, he doesn't do like I do. I'll bring some eggs and stuff like that in the cooler, or try to bring some dehydrated foods or something you can make in case you're not catching any fish. He doesn't do any of that. He'll show you exactly what to eat. He'll show you exactly where to find that food. And if you can't find it, you ain't gonna have nothing to eat, man. And that's one thing, he's out there catching what some people call mud bugs, his old crawfish, crawdads, is what I always call them. But catching those things. And I remember as a kid, he'd come in, he had like this freaking big tank, filled with crawfish. He'd caught out in the creek, and I'm like, what are we doing with these things, He's we're gonna eat them. Like, okay, so what? You get your crab roll bag at store. They didn't used to cost much. Throw some fresh water in there, man. Now he would actually give it some time. So the creek water versus, the water that we were using, that they would have time for any impurities and stuff like that. And he would feed them so that they were proper, whatever. It wasn't anything contaminated about them. Then we'd boil them up. And I was just really shocked that they taste exactly like shrimp, which tastes exactly like lobster. And it was really cool experience. I mean, that is cool. So when I got out to Oregon with him, we finally went out camping. He's like, man, let's go camping. Like, what kind of camping are we doing? And I had a truck with a camper bike on the back of it, so I need to bring my truck. And he's like, I mean, you can if you want to, but you're going to use tents. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. We'll use tent. So we go out and we're out there, and he's brought food and stuff like that. And I'm like, what are we bringing food for? I thought we'd catch crawfish and things like that. So we're out there and we're catching crawfish. I mean, big old crawdads and stuff. And it was great because his kids are out there and catching those. They get to eat crawdads and stuff with us and all. It was pretty cool. It's one of those things where it's kind of reminiscent of when you were kids, but now you're adults. And what I learned is, when you're a kid, they pinch kind of hard, but the crawdads out west are quite a bit bigger than what we had in our creeks growing up. And where a pinch would turn into a pretty large pinch with these guys out west, but it didn't deter us from getting them. So now we didn't do any of the weird stuff, hanging them from our ears or our nose and stuff like that, like you see these kids doing today. I don't understand that, but whatever, it is what it is. But we did a lot of hunting growing up and stuff like that. I love to hunt. I love to deer hunt, but thing about Florida area, I just, unless I just really needed to meat, I just can't justify shooting the deer out here because they're just not very big. They're like German shepherds with limbs on their head. They're miserably small. If I was to do some hunting, I'd have to at least go into Alabama area where they've got some meat on their bones, man. Now they have squirrels and stuff, but you have to be careful with different types of animals down here because there's so much stuff that is protected in this state when it comes to it. And if you don't know what you're doing, then you're harming a endangered species or something like that, or a protected species, and you're going to go to jail. You're going to lose your firearm. You're going to lose your hunting rights. You're going to lose your ability to own a firearm and all that kind of stuff. So I don't really hunt Florida much. Now, if it comes to wild hogs or something like that, yeah, absolutely. They're like, hey, man, it's on your property, take it out. So see some wild hogs or something, would consider that. Did some wild hog hunting up in Indiana. Was not crazy about the meat. When they call it wild, it's wild, man. You got to really know how to process that stuff. And the guy that I was hunting with, who said he knew how to process it, he didn't know what he was doing. So, but those are some things that you can do, and you can look out west, but or up in the Midwest, I should say. Never really got a chance to do much hunting up in the West Coast. I did get to do some fishing up there, and that was a lot of fun. But most of the fishing I like to do, I love freshwater fishing. Saltwater fishing is okay. Now, if you're in certain locations, it's probably a lot of fun, but unless you really have a boat, there's only certain areas you can go around here, unless you want to spend a bunch of money to go out on one of them boats. But I'm more of a freshwater fisherman. It's been my thing, but I really got into fly fishing and stuff when I retired. And that was more or less, my brother was into it when we were kids and was kind of learning how to do a lot of that from him growing up, and then have just expanded upon that knowledge as we've gotten older. And, I love going out fly fishing. I went out, got the waders and the vests and all that good stuff. So you look the part. But you don't want to look the part if you can't catch anything, because then people are just making fun of you. But you can actually catch quite a bit of stuff. Now, you don't always catch large stuff, but you can catch something when people using a traditional rod are catching nothing. So at least then you have bragging rights, even if they're only this big. You call them, you caught that fish, where they didn't catch anything. So at least you have some bait, maybe. But and that's always a lot of fun. But did a lot of trout fishing. We come up through Tennessee, North Carolina area and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Went out with my dad and all. And, he out caught me, which was fun for him. It wasn't fun for me, but I did get to have my laugh because he slipped on a rock and fell in with his waders and all, got filled up with water and all. And he come up, it wasn't gone real long, and come back, he's got fish and all this stuff. He's like soaked head to toe. And I'm going, hey man, what happened? It's not even hot out here. He goes, I fell in. I was like, you fell in? But that can be a very dangerous situation if you fall in with waders. They fill it with water, and you can get dragged down the current and drown. So be careful of that, guys, if you decide to do some fly fishing. But I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I hope you've enjoyed the content. So we do have Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. And true to nature, I am not going to be making a video tomorrow. I'm going to be spending time with family and stuff. We might post something up tomorrow that we make today just so it can be out there for you. But I'm hoping that your focus is going to be on spending time with family. If you don't have family in the area and you're single, like, I am, but I do have family in the area, thankfully. But if you're single and you don't have family in the area, there are a lot of great outreach programs that you can plug into, and they need people that care, and they need people to help. So that would be something that I would recommend looking into. If you don't have anything else going on, may as well be a blessing to somebody else. But I'm going to hop off here. Have a wonderful evening.